You've probably heard that Australia is home to some of the most bizarre and extraordinary animals on Earth, like the egg-laying echidnas or thorny devils. Australia is also accused of having the most dangerous wildlife, with every single one of the top 10 deadliest snakes in the world living there. But its prehistoric fauna was even more remarkable, with 7-meter long lizards and marsupial predators that gave lions a run for their money. But why is Australia home to so many animals that can kill you? And why did its evolution take such a strange path compared to everywhere else on the planet? To find out the answers of all of these questions, we need to look back in time to the supercontinent of Gondwana. This huge landmass, which formed 550 million years ago, was made up of Africa, South America, India, Arabia, Antarctica, and of course Australia. Starting 180 million years ago, the movement of tectonic plates started to break apart Gondwana. For a while, Antarctica clung onto Australia, but they eventually split apart from each other. This tectonic movement explains much of the biogeography of the world today, especially the marsupials. The marsupials were in the right place at the right time. First appearing in South America, they quickly spread across Gondwana. But by then, Australia was already on its own. Although the close proximity to Antarctica meant that by pure chance, a few individuals made it to the shore of Australia. Placental mammals were actually present in Australia, but disappeared a few million years before marsupials arrived, for reasons still unclear today. Since Australia was isolated, no further terrestrial migrations could occur, meaning that only the creatures already present could evolve to fill the various ecological niches. This was the case until it got closer to New Guinea, but we'll discuss that later. In the absence of placental mammals, the marsupials got a head start and eventually came to dominate Australia's ecosystems. But there is actually another major group of mammals that are neither placental or marsupial that have inhabited the continent for way longer than either of them: the monotremes. Take the platypus for example, a creature so bizarre that when scientists first saw it, they didn't think it was a real animal, but rather parts of different animals pieced together. Little did these scientists know that a venomous, egg-laying, beaver-tailed, webbed-footed, duck-billed animal did actually exist. Along with the platypus, the other monotreme still alive today is the echidna, which bears a striking similarity to hedgehogs, except they are much spikier and have a longer snout for the same use as anteaters. And despite how long the monotremes have been around for, their numbers have dwindled. At the same time, the marsupials boomed, eventually diversifying into the 4 orders that are around today. Firstly, there is the order Diprotodontia, which contains most of the herbivorous marsupials, like kangaroos. Kangaroos belong to a family known as Macropodidae, which includes many lesser known yet equally interesting species, such as the tree kangaroos, quokkas, and pademelons. Secondly, we have the order Dasyuromorphia, also known as the marsupial carnivores. In this order we find animals like the quoll, which at first glance seem harmless, but as sunlight fades and gives way to night, they turn into ruthless predators, with the second most powerful bite in the animal kingdom, second only to the Tasmanian devil, a ferocious animal that strikes terror into the lives of wombats. Whereas in a completely different order, with just one genus containing 2 species, represents the greatest example of convergent evolution in the world. These rare animals are found in Australia's desert interior, a place where few other animals dare to venture. These are of course the marsupial moles. Although Australia's marsupials might not scare you, there's a good chance that its reptiles will. Its biggest predator weighs up to 1,000 kilograms and can grow to 7 meters long. The saltwater crocodile, the world's largest reptile. Unlike many of the marsupials, the saltwater crocodile didn't evolve in Australia. Instead, it was able to swim over from Asia, establishing their largest population of anywhere in the world, with an estimated 200,000 individuals. Despite their huge numbers, saltwater crocodiles rarely kill people, although they can be extremely dangerous if precautions aren't taken. Australia's other crocodile, the freshwater crocodile, is both less dangerous and numerous, and is unable to kill a person. In spite of the abundance of reptiles in Australia, it is the only continent, besides Antarctica of course, not to have any tortoises. Unlike the crocodiles, modern turtles only arrived when it came into close enough proximity to Asia. But long ago, a group of turtles known as the Myolanidae inhabited both Australia and many Pacific islands. These turtles have one of the most interesting histories of any animal, and deserve a video of their own, so I won't go too in depth here. but it's thought that they evolved and spread out on the now submerged continent of Zealandia, and as sea levels rose, these populations became isolated on smaller islands. At some point they dispersed across the ocean to Australia. Although they disappeared from Australia during the Miocene, they clung on in places like New Caledonia until humans arrived. Unlike these turtles, snakes have been extremely successful in Australia. And if you encounter a snake in Australia, chances are it's venomous, since Australia is the only country where venomous snakes outnumber non-venomous ones. But out of all the snake species, one reigns over all others as the deadliest snake known to man, the deadly inland taipan. But why did Australia become the home of so many venomous species? The answer yet again relies in its geography. It is believed that as Australia drifted away from Antarctica, venomous snakes had not yet evolved, or at least not reached Gondwana, meaning that for most of its history, Australia was completely void of any venomous snakes. But this was all about to change. Around 30 million years ago, a group of snakes known as the elapids swam across the ocean and rapidly colonized Australia. And if there's one thing you should know about elapids, it is that they are highly venomous. Like snakes, most lizards can trace their origins to dispersal from Asia. Among Australian lizards, to me one stands out as the most interesting and bizarre: the thorny devil, a species that can live up to 20 years and is covered in sharp spikes, and even has a fake head on its neck to fool predators. But these spikes aren't just used for defense, they also help it channel water around its body. Other amazing lizards include the frilled neck lizard and the huge parenti. Like much of the southern hemisphere, Australia doesn't have a single salamander species, leaving frogs as the only native amphibians, with 93% of its species being found nowhere else on the planet. Having evolved over 180 million years ago, frogs have been around for a very long time, and in Australia, they have evolved like nowhere else. But let's take a step back to explain the assemblage of frogs in this part of the world. The two biggest groups of Australian amphibians are the ground and water frogs. Interestingly, their closest ancestor lives on the other side of the world, the Chilean toads. This genetic link may seem bizarre at first, but it makes sense when you realize that Antarctica was not always as cold as it is today, and these frogs were part of the same lineage that only became separated after Antarctica froze over. The tree frogs are also thought to have spread through Antarctica. Further migrations also occurred from New Guinea, resulting in the lace-lid, white-lipped tree frog, wood frog, and of course the narrow-mouthed frogs. Thanks to their ability of flight, birds are able to disperse far more easily than any other group of animals, resulting in only 45% of Australia's birds being endemic. Some endemic birds have appeared though, including a few whose origins can be traced back a very long time, like cassowaries and emus, the biggest birds outside of Africa. Now that we've had a good look at the animals that still exist, I think it's time to take a look at the continent's extinct megafauna. During the Pleistocene, Australia's ecosystems were unrecognizable compared to today, with an abundance of large animals, such as the giant echidna, measuring 1 meter in length, diprotodons, the largest ever marsupials, giant wombats, 3 meter tall kangaroos, marsupial lions, giant rat kangaroos, thylacines, mihirungs, megalania, the Wanambi snake, and quincana, the semi-terrestrial crocodile. Obviously these animals are now extinct, leaving the question of whether it was us or a natural phenomenon. Humans first arrived in Australia somewhere between 65 and 50,000 years ago, roughly 20,000 years before all the megafauna rapidly disappeared. At the same time, there was a sharp uptick in fires, grasslands shrunk, and water became scarce, with vast expanses of shrubland and grassland being burned by people. The delay of extinction from when humans arrived can be explained by the fact that humans simply didn't reach southern Australia until much later than the north. But discussing only extinct megafauna barely scratches the surface, as when Europeans arrived, they brought invasive species with them that have since decimated the native fauna, causing so many extinctions. And this isn't just something of the past, as we're on course to lose many more species without serious effort.